My husband was diagnosed with azoospermia. So we had to buy sperm. After the baby was born, he regretted it and cursed the baby as a bastard. He also punched and kicked me while I was in the postpartum period. My mother-in-law urged him to raise his brother's son. I filed for divorce. They didn't want to split the assets. So they worked together to push me down the stairs, faking the appearance of having committed suicide out of depression. Then when I opened my eyes, I was reborn back to the day Robert was diagnosed with azoospermia. The beginning of the main text. In the consultation room, the doctor calmly stated the fact that my husband Robert had been diagnosed with azoospermia. Next to me, Robert listened in silence and seemed relatively composed. But inside, I was in a state of turmoil. After being pushed down the stairs by Robert and his mother, I had been reborn on the day Robert was diagnosed with azoospermia. Although the intense pain from the fall had completely subsided, I was still shaken. The fear of dying and endless anger made me breathe heavily. My hand, which was holding on to the table, couldn't stop trembling. The doctor mistook my reaction for excitement at the test results. He sighed and said, "If you want a child, you can choose to use sperm from a sperm bank." In my previous life, Robert and I had carefully considered the option of buying sperm to have a child. Robert knew that it was his problem, and he always felt guilty towards me. After I got pregnant, he treated me with the utmost care, prepared nutritious meals for me, never let me do any housework, and took leave from work every time I had a checkup. I gave birth to our son David. He took care of me and our child without fail. I really felt that he was a rare good father and husband. Our family of 3 would live happily like any normal family. My mother wanted to come and take care of me during the postpartum period, considering that my father had just had cataract surgery, and that Robert had already taken good care of me and the baby. I did not let her come. When she learned that I had given birth to a boy, Robert's mother, Mary, was overjoyed. She volunteered to come from her hometown in the countryside to take care of me. The moment she saw the baby, the smile on her face disappeared. Her expression became strange. She asked Robert, "You and Jenny both have single eyelids, but the baby has double eyelids." We didn't tell Robert's family and friends that he was azoospermic. For 2 reasons. We wanted to protect his pride and prevent him from being pointed at by others. And we didn't want the child's growth to be affected. Robert used recessive genes to fob off his mother. Mary was doubtful and frequently found things about the child that didn't resemble Robert. I was sure that I had cheated on him behind his back. My friends came to visit me at home together. One of them was a man who happened to have big double eyelids. Mary was convinced that the man was my lover. She insisted that Robert take a paternity test with the child. We were so annoyed that we had to tell her that Robert had been diagnosed with azoospermia and had bought a sperm donor to father the child. But Mary became even more agitated. She cursed the child as a bastard. She wept and yelled. She kept scolding Robert for being so stupid. "Do you want to help someone raise your son? When the bastard grows up and finds out that you're not his real father, what's he going to do?" "Mom, stop it." Robert whispered to his mother to stop. His mother's tightly knitted brow and pained eyes revealed the turmoil within him. After that day, Robert changed. Before, when the baby cried, he would gently pick him up and soothe him with a gentle stroke. Now, however, he subconsciously slapped the baby and scolded the barely 1-month-old baby. "Be quiet. Shut up." He even threw the baby onto the bed and left him there. I often stayed up late to breastfeed and was seriously sleep-deprived. One night, the baby cried again. I asked Robert to change the baby's diaper. He pulled the quilt over his head and said the exact same thing as his mother. "You're the bastard you gave birth to. Take care of yourself." Tiredness, frustration, and anger welled up in me. Breastfeeding makes emotions fragile. The more I thought about it, the more uncomfortable I felt. Choking back my tears, I asked, "What do you mean now?" "Buying a sperm donor was a decision we made together. Why are you doing this to me and the baby?" Robert sat up abruptly and fidgeted, scratching his hair. Before he spoke, "Jenny, Why don't we give the baby to someone else? My mother said she'd let us adopt my eldest brother's son. Thomas is 6 years old. But he has the blood of the Robert family in him. I believe. If we raise him with all our hearts, when he grows up, he will treat us like his real parents. And support us in our old age. I looked at Robert in disbelief. I thought he was a graduate student. And had different ideas from his traditional mother. I never expected him to agree with her completely. He even wanted me to give the baby away. Of course I refused. I'd rather raise a bastard with outsiders. Rather than raise a child for our Robert family. Jenny. What are you scheming? Mary suddenly pushed open the bedroom door. Adding fuel to the flames. The atmosphere she added to the fire became more and more tense. Insisting that I give away the child. We will divorce. Saying. I got up and prepared to leave with the baby in my arms. David was born after I had been pregnant for 10 months. He has long been connected to my bloodline. I can't bear to give him away. And I will never give him away. Mary saw that I was firm in my attitude. And instantly softened. She hurriedly held me back. And said. Jenny. Don't get worked up. Robert is just discussing it with you. Robert also apologized to me. Saying that he had lost his head and hadn't thought things through. The next day. Mary returned to the countryside. Without her stirring up trouble. We had a few days of peace. Although Robert wasn't as indifferent to the child as before. He was still tolerable. And returned to being attentive to me as before. When my parents came to visit. They saw Robert bustling around. And couldn't stop praising him. In order not to worry them. I didn't tell them what had happened a while ago. A few days later. Mary came back. She also brought Thomas. The son of Robert's eldest brother. I told the eldest son. You can raise Thomas. Just treat him like your own father and mother. Robert told me. That he had already contacted his brother to come and pick up the child. He asked me not to be angry with his mother. It was rare for the child to come from the countryside to the city. So I simply let him play for a few days before he left. After dinner. Robert asked me to take Thomas to buy his daily necessities. Thomas stood in front of the toy store. Insisting on buying toys. Or else he would throw himself on the ground and roll around. Mary had raised him. And spoiled him. I was anxious to go home and breastfeed. So I gave in to his demands. And bought him more than 10 toys. When we arrived home. Robert was asleep on the sofa. And Mary was mopping the kitchen floor. As I changed my shoes. I asked Robert. Where David was. He replied sleepily. That he was in the bedroom sleeping. Somehow. A feeling of unease rose in my heart. And I quickly walked into the bedroom. The bed was strewn with baby bibs. Bottles. Clothes. And a small quilt. But I couldn't see the baby. Robert. Where is the baby? He yawned and came to the door of the bedroom. Didn't he always sleep in the bed? I hurriedly climbed into bed. Lifted the winter quilt that the adults had covered themselves with. And finally found David in the corner by the wall. He lay motionless. His mouth wide open. His chest did not rise or fall. The skin that was exposed beyond his clothes had turned purple. David. David. I frantically patted the baby's little face. But there was no response. Robert. Who had been dozing. Suddenly woke up. He hurried over to check on the baby. Get out of here. Get out. I was anxious and angry. I picked up the baby and tried to rush to the hospital. Robert pulled me back. He kept reassuring me. He was like the baby's real father. He looked especially worried. He immediately called the emergency services. When they arrived, they sadly said that the baby had died. The cause of death was asphyxia. I subconsciously suspected that Robert and his mother had deliberately killed the baby. Robert guessed what I was thinking. And volunteered an explanation. Jenny. Why would I risk going to prison? To kill a child. We've been in love for 2 years. And married for 5. Don't you know me by now? Robert and I were classmates in graduate school. He pursued me. During our relationship. He was gentle and considerate. And treated me extremely well. My family and friends spoke highly of him. I thought I had found true love. I didn't mind that he was from a rural area. And our family conditions were not as good as mine. We only received 68,000 yuan in marriage gifts. And were also given a new flat and a car. After marriage, Robert's love for me has not diminished. He still puts me first in everything. He is very family-oriented. Otherwise, I would not have stayed with him. After he found out he was sterile, he has been worrying about David not being related to him recently. But I don't think he would go as far as killing the child. Mary also kept protesting her innocence. I really don't like this child. But I really want to harm him. It's better to secretly sell him than to kill him. That way, I can still make money. Their words and their expression of having a clear conscience dispelled some of my suspicions. The accidental death of the child was related to my leaving home at the time. And the fact that Robert and Mary were irresponsible. I was caught in a whirlpool of self-blame and pain. I really couldn't go on living with Robert. So I filed for divorce. He didn't agree. He even brought up the old argument again. David is gone. We can raise Thomas. He'll also be filial to us in the future. No matter how he and his mother persuaded me, I was firm in my resolve. Seeing that there was no way to salvage the situation, Robert's eyes gradually became gloomy. He suddenly grabbed my wrist and flung me to the ground. My knee hit the corner of the table, and I broke out in a cold sweat. Robert, are you crazy? He leaned over and grabbed my hair. In a cold voice. I'll ask you one last time. Do you really want a divorce? I've never seen him look like this before. Like the cold-blooded abuser in a horror movie. So it turns out that his gentle side was an act. Or just had two faces. Mary's voice sounded from the side. Robert, if you divorce me, she'll get half of everything. And you won't have a home to live in. Why don't you just do and get it over with? Throw her off the building. And say she had some kind of depression and jumped. I was shocked. I never imagined Mary would dare say such lawless things. It seems David was also deliberately killed by them. A chill ran down my spine. I uncontrollably shivered. And trembled. Trying to take out my phone to call the police. Mary hurriedly urged. Throw her off now. Do you want to wait until she calls the police? Robert reacted. And snatched the phone away. Together with his mother. They lifted me up. And threw me out the window. I was overwhelmed by a sense of weightlessness. The moment I hit the ground, I felt the pain of being crushed. Hell is empty. And the devil is here. I can't accept it. I can't accept that I was killed by them. Downstairs. Robert had not even had time to put on his shoes. He rolled over to me, sobbing, his eyes red with tears. According to him, after my child died, I suffered from depression. And suddenly jumped to my death. He hit his head on the ground in grief, leaving a bright red mark on his forehead. He wailed heartrendingly. You and the baby are gone. How can I live on alone? The neighbors who had gathered to watch the commotion felt sympathy for him. And went up to comfort him, sighing that he was a deeply affectionate and pitiful man. I wanted to expose his true colors. In front of everyone. But I was floating in the air. And could only watch him act. I couldn't do anything. My parents didn't believe I had committed suicide. Robert had long since colluded with his mother to come up with a story. And produced a paternity test to incriminate me. Saying that I had cheated on him. The child I had was a bastard. My father couldn't bear the blow. He had a stroke on the spot. He died despite rescue efforts. My mother wept. Her health deteriorated. She passed away in just over a year. I hated myself for thinking too well of them. But I didn't know that the person by my side had long since lost their humanity. Reborn in this life. I will expose Robert's hypocritical mask. And make him and his mother pay the price they deserve. Leaving the consultation room, Robert saw that I was unusually silent. And took the initiative to ask me. Jenny, do you despise me? I didn't answer. He lowered his eyes. With a sad look on his face. I'm infertile. I'm useless to him. Pretend. Keep pretending. Men are good at manipulating women with their sympathy. Robert is gentle and refined when it doesn't hurt his own interests. But as soon as he feels he's losing out, he'll show his true colors. This is the nature of most Phoenix men. I suppressed the hatred in my heart. And comforted him a little. I've just been reborn. I need to clear my thoughts. And figure out how to deal with Robert and his mother. Just as I was thinking, Mary volunteered to deliver the goods. The 2 years before I married Robert. She treated me well. Everyone said she was a sensible and good mother-in-law. My stomach never did anything. She resented me openly and secretly. Mary placed a plastic bag full of groceries on the table. And her contemptuous gaze fell on my flat stomach. She started again about me not being pregnant. My poor son. Has married a hen that can't lay eggs. And it's made an old woman like me run around looking for folk remedies for you. Robert looked embarrassed. He told his mother to stop. Mary glared at him. Her voice rose. Why can't I say it? In the past. No man would want a woman like her. In my opinion. You might as well go out and find another woman. The more she said, the more Robert couldn't stop her. I snorted in derision. And threw Robert's test report in her face. Take a good look. Who is the hen that can't lay eggs? In the past. I was concerned about Robert's reputation. And never told the truth. Now I won't help him hide it anymore. Mary looked at the test report. With the diagnosis of male infertility and azoospermia. And various parameters. Of 0. Her eyes widened in disbelief. Her face grew increasingly ugly. What could be more painful than destroying the image of the perfect son in a mother's heart? Even Mary herself didn't notice. Her hand holding the report was shaking uncontrollably. She suddenly threw the report on the ground. Self-deceiving. She muttered. I can't read this nonsense. It must be a misdiagnosis by the hospital. How could Robert be sick? Haha. I laughed. And threw the medical reports from the other hospitals in Mary's bag in front of her. So these hospitals also made a mistake. After Robert was first diagnosed with azoospermia, we were afraid that the hospitals had made a mistake. So we went to several authoritative hospitals for tests. The diagnosis showed that he was completely azoospermic. Even the doctor said there was no need to investigate further. Mary's expression gradually broke. As if her beliefs had collapsed. Her proud little son, the first graduate student in the village, actually had azoospermia. How could she pass on the Robert family? High quality. Incestuous. Mary looked at Robert. Not sure if she was comforting him or herself. It's okay. It's okay. Mom will find you a folk remedy. We have a lot of folk remedies in the countryside. Mom will definitely cure you. Robert blamed me for telling his mother that he had azoospermia. He grabbed my wrist and dragged me into the bedroom. He angrily questioned me. Why did you tell my mother that? I disobeyed, causing the mask of his gentle manners to crack prematurely. I forcefully shook off Robert's hand. And looked straight at him. Robert. Are you a man? Your mother misunderstood my infertility. And sarcastically mocked me. You didn't say a word to help me. I'm just telling the truth now. But you blame me. My expression became more and more disappointed. I feel like I've never really known you. Do you really love me? If you love me, why would you watch me suffer? Why would you selfishly lose your temper with me? I pretended to squeeze out 2 tears. Isn't that just moral blackmail? Who can't do it? Robert's anger in his eyes was indeed replaced by guilt. He apologized to me helplessly. And kept assuring me that he really loved me. I took the opportunity to ask to sleep in separate rooms. Robert had no choice but to agree. Immediately afterwards, I told my parents that Robert was infertile. In my previous life, I was so stupid that I gave them the opportunity to turn the tables after I died. This time, I will make it known to everyone. And let Robert lose face. My parents knew that I liked children. And had plans to have children. And persuaded Robert and I to divorce. I will divorce. But not now. Just divorce him like this. And spare the family. It would be too easy for the mother and son. Now that Robert has a physical disability, his mother is afraid that I will divorce. And is especially nice to me. Taking on the household chores. Even hand-washing my socks for me. And preparing 3 meals a day according to my preferences. Which are very generous. She picked up a chicken leg and tried to put it in my bowl. I moved my bowl away without being noticed. And said in a strange voice. Didn't you say I was a hen that couldn't lay eggs? How can I eat my own kind? Mary froze with the chicken leg in her hand. and smiled sheepishly, as the crow's feet around her eyes crumpled up. Jenny. It's Mom's fault. She suddenly slapped herself in the mouth twice with her other hand. I'm clumsy. And can't speak well. You're a good boy. Don't be like Mom. She put the chicken leg back on the plate. And no one touched it. Until it was cleared from the table. Robert tried to test the waters many times. For fear that I would divorce him. I said that I could continue to be with him. But I wanted a child. He was overjoyed. And volunteered to donate his sperm. I looked worried. A child born in this way is not related to you by blood. Will you be good to the child? Robert promised that he would treat the child as if it were his own. If I didn't have any memories from my past life, I would definitely be fooled by his sincere and affectionate appearance at this moment. You should discuss this with your mother. It concerns two families. We can't make a decision behind her back. Mary attached great importance to blood ties. And would never agree to having a child through artificial insemination. She really said that children born through artificial insemination are bastards. She suggested that Robert raise his brother's son. I stroked my flat stomach. And David's cute little face appeared before my eyes. My dear. Wait a little longer. Mom will definitely avenge you. Adopt Thomas to our family. Will my brother and sister-in-law agree? I pretended to hesitate. Mary's face was full of sarcasm. How dare he disagree? Sean's father died young. Mary raised her two sons alone. The eldest dropped out of school to support Robert's education. While working on the construction site, he unfortunately fell and injured his leg. He became disabled. And could only do farm work and take care of the children at home. He was honest. And somewhat filial. He was controlled by Mary in every aspect. Robert had excellent academic performance since childhood. And was the only postgraduate in the village. He helped Mary earn face. She always favored Robert in every aspect. In the last life, I saw my sister-in-law's WeChat moments. And learned that Mary took Thomas while her eldest brother threatened to kill himself. While she was working outside. No mother would willingly give up her son to someone else. When my sister-in-law found out, she kept asking for a divorce. Since Robert really wants to raise Thomas in this life, I will of course help him to do so. I found my sister-in-law in private. And told her that Mary wanted her to adopt Thomas to Robert. She was on guard. And cursed Mary repeatedly. Calling her an old hag and shameless poison woman. I will never agree to adopt Thomas to you. No, you have to agree. My sister-in-law looked at me warily. Ready to curse me as well. A smile spread across my lips. As I said calmly. Isn't it good that someone is willing to pay for you to raise your child? And give him a good education in the city? My sister-in-law looked puzzled. And took a moment to understand what I meant. She still had misgivings. About the child not living with me. And being unfriendly with me in the future. You can move here with the child. Someone will take care of the expenses for your family. Isn't that great? My smile grew even wider. And all those miscellaneous tutoring classes and interest classes. Sign up the kids for as many as possible. The city kids have them. We, Thomas and I, want them all. As for whether the kids will support you, or Robert in the future, and whether they will be close to you, or him, it all depends on how you, as a mother, educate them. It's not that letting Robert die happily is better than letting him live a painful life. I want to watch the child he raised with money suck his blood bit by bit like a leech. My sister-in-law suddenly understood. And smiled. She knew that Robert had been diagnosed with azoospermia. And could guess my intention. You're going to divorce Robert? I smiled faintly. She gave me an approving look. You should definitely divorce him. You can find a normal man. Give your children a normal family. I rented a flat. I let my parents move in first. Before mentioning divorce to Robert, I had to make every preparation. Protect myself and my family. My parents didn't know Robert's dark side. Even if they didn't understand why I was so cautious, they still unconditionally supported all my decisions. Jenny. No matter what happens to you, you must tell them. Don't keep it to yourself. They'll always be there for you. Seeing them worrying about me at their age brings tears to my eyes. I told my parents my plan. Robert will most likely not agree to a divorce. We must be prepared for a drawn-out battle. And guard against Robert's desperate measures. To ensure my safety, I formally proposed divorce to Robert over the phone. On the other end, Robert clearly did not expect. A moment of silence. He spoke with a false air of ease. Jenny. Don't joke with me. I'm not joking. Robert. Let's set a time. My lawyer will meet with you to discuss the details. From today on, I will not meet Robert alone again. He's crazy. He'll do anything for his own interests. Why does he want a divorce? We obviously love each other. Don't we? Robert was still a little dazed. Because you're sterile. But I want a child. After finding out about the azoospermia, he pretended to be unconcerned. But in fact he cared deeply. My blunt reply was undoubtedly rubbing salt into his wounds. He was indeed choked. It took a while to recover. We have a child. Thomas. He has nothing to do with me. Robert compromised. Then let's go and borrow a sperm to have a child. Have a child that belongs to us. I couldn't help but sneer. What makes you think I would give my own child? A non-biological father. Robert couldn't hold back any longer. His tone gradually grew darker. Jenny. Do you have to be so extreme? Is it extreme? I think it's very generous. I haven't told my classmates, friends, or colleagues about his infertility. And I haven't caused my family to fall apart like he did in his previous life. Robert was so angry that he hung up the phone directly. It's not easy to divorce a Phoenix man. On the surveillance footage, Robert's mother was furious. She insulted me with all kinds of vicious and unspeakable words. Just stay there. And see what she can do. She wants a divorce. And it's out of the question. Luckily, I installed surveillance cameras in the house in advance. And was able to observe their movements in real time. I called Robert. And threatened to tell his friends and colleagues about his infertility. If he didn't agree to a divorce. To deal with a scoundrel. You need to use even more scoundrelly methods. Robert was completely enraged. Jenny. Don't go too far. You're making me anxious. I'm capable of anything. Mary took the phone. I thought she was going to yell at me. But instead she tried to reason with me. And appeal to my emotions. Jenny. You and Robert have been together for 7 years after all. Are you really willing to let go? All these years. He's been good to you. And you've seen it. You're 30 years old. And divorced from Robert. No man will want you. I snorted. Your son is infertile. And there are women who want him. They want to see me. Mary couldn't hold back after all. And yelled at me. I turned a deaf ear. And reminded Robert in a louder voice. If you don't give me an answer by 10 o'clock tonight, I'll post your infertility on my circle of friends. After saying that, I hung up. Robert was so proud. On the security camera, he paced the living room anxiously, looking to Mary for help. She said, if you say so. If anyone finds out, you'll lose a piece of meat. No divorce under any circumstances. If they get a divorce, she'll get half the house. Millions of dollars. How long will you have to work to earn that much money? Mary said. No. The house is premarital property. They won't get a penny. Mary reassured Robert. Don't worry. Mom won't let Jenny off the hook. Mary went to my parents' house to make trouble. Unexpectedly. No one was home. The house was on the market. She found my company. And played the victim. In front of all my colleagues. Accusing me of being a bad woman. My husband has azoospermia. Instead of staying with me, he wants a divorce. We've been together for 7 years. Even if you raise a dog, you can develop an attachment to it. Jenny is completely heartless. How can your company hire just anyone? Someone like her, who has no sense of responsibility, and can only share in your wealth, but not your difficulties, is definitely not competent. She wants to ruin my reputation. And get me fired. Boss Wong came out of the office. And Mary immediately went up to her. And spat out venom. You are Jenny's boss. Right. She repeated what she had just said. And emphasized. That Jenny was a cold-blooded woman. who was worse than a dog, and would only bring shame to your company. After she finished, Wang asked in return. So what do you want me to do? Mary thought Wang had been convinced by her words, and looked at me proudly. Fire her. That's great. You think that's a good idea too, don't you? Thanks to me, you can see Jenny's true colors. Wang didn't finish her sentence. Mary quickly chimed in. Wang frowned. Disgusted. She drew away from Mary, and finished what she had left unfinished. What a cheek. Mary was dumbfounded. Wang let out a sneer. Didn't you once say that Jenny couldn't get pregnant? And keep nagging your son to divorce her. Now that your son is infertile, and Jenny wants a divorce, you don't agree anymore. Wang is only 5 years older than me. Most of the people in our office are women. They are all partners who started the business with her. At work, we are in a superior and subordinate relationship. In private, we are friends who can talk about anything. She and most of the colleagues in the office know that I have never been pregnant. Mary instigated Robert to divorce me. Mary is desperate. How can a woman be the same as a man? What's the difference? Of course there is a difference. How can a woman compare with a man? Society's double standards for men and women have always imprisoned women. Sister Wang's husband cheated on her while she was pregnant. Her parents-in-law said that her husband had only made a small mistake that every man makes, and that she, as a woman, should be tolerant. She was not bound by moral constraints, and decided to get an abortion and divorce her husband. She is a model of an independent woman. Mary's female colleagues in the office spoke up in succession to refute her. Auntie Mary, women really cannot compare with men. My sister-in-law's husband was infertile. She did not divorce him, and chose to buy a sperm donor to have a child. After the child was born, her husband, relying on his infertility, fooled around with other women, and contracted an illness, which he also passed on to my sister-in-law. You see, in terms of fooling around, women are no match for men. Your son and daughter-in-law are talking about getting a divorce. Your son, Mei, is hiding and letting you, his old mother, come out and stir up trouble for him. Your son is a big man, and indeed doesn't have the responsibility of an old woman like you. Mary was outnumbered by more than 10 mouths, and cursed angrily. Birds of a feather flocked together. You and Jenny are the same. You are both bad women. Let's see which man will dare to want you in the future. The male colleague by the window slammed the table, and stood up abruptly. Put his arm around the shoulders of the female colleague who had just spoken. She is my wife. Mary shivered with fear. Feeling that she had no fun, she ran away in a dispirited manner. This old woman is really disgusting. Jenny, don't worry. Go ahead and get a divorce. We support you. Sister Wang patted my back. Many colleagues gathered around to show their concern for me. Looking at their kind eyes, I felt deeply moved. The agreement divorce failed. I filed a lawsuit with the court. The court summons had already been delivered to Robert. Even the most clingy person can be shaken off one day. In 6 months at most, I will have successfully divorced him. At that time, Robert actually called me on his own initiative, and said that he agreed to divorce, and asked me to come home to sign the divorce agreement. I could see clearly what he was up to when I walked in the door with a large crowd of people, including my parents, lawyer, relatives and friends, and colleagues. Robert and his mother were stunned. Robert's face was darker than the bottom of a pot. Jenny, what are you doing bringing so many people here? What? Huh? He still dares to ask me. The day before yesterday, I saw on the security camera Robert and his mother discussing divorce on the grounds of mutual agreement. To lure me back, drug me, and fake an accidental fire. To burn me alive in the room. Although the house was destroyed, but I died. The two did not divorce. He can still inherit my parents' wealth. Unexpectedly, I brought a large group of people back, thwarting his plan completely. Of course he was angry, dragging his feet. He refused to sign the divorce agreement. Our mutual friend Zhang Jun persuaded him. Shengu, are you a man? Just get a divorce. Be a man about it. Another male colleague, Chen Feng, Also said, "You're infertile. Why are you still hanging around Jenny? Be a man and act like a man. Don't do anything to embarrass yourself." Everyone else chimed in. And with all the words coming at him, Robert was put on the spot. He had always been a reserved and decent person in front of his friends and colleagues. He had no choice but to sign the divorce papers in front of everyone. But I felt a vague sense of unease in my heart. One morning, I opened my phone and countless unread messages popped up. "Robert has posted you online. You should take a look." I clicked on the news link and found Robert accusing me. From his perspective, I was a heartless woman. He took care of me, but I cheated on him during our marriage. The picture was of me meeting with a lawyer alone. He found out I was azoospermic. I couldn't wait to file for divorce. And I cheated him out of the car and house. Robert portrayed himself as an honest man who was cheated out of his assets by a woman. There were a lot of pictures of me in the post. Many of them were secretly taken. Although the photos were pixelated, they still allowed a fairly complete picture of my appearance to be put together. And the netizen masses retweeted them. And the page's popularity continued to rise, even reaching the top 10 trending searches on multiple platforms. Someone claiming to be an insider jumped out and asserted that I got pregnant during the marriage, and had an affair with different men, and had multiple abortions. Some people said that I was a professional womanizer who had attended professional seducer training courses. After sucking the blood of a man dry, I would go find the next man. The rumors got more and more outrageous. Netizens sympathized with Robert's plight and spontaneously helped him denounce me. My phone number, ID card, educational background, and my parents' phone numbers were all exposed. Netizens who claimed to be the army of justice called and texted to abuse me. What's more, they even took over the comment section of the university I attended, demanding that they revoke my degree. My social media accounts were exposed. The comment sections and private messages were filled with foul-smelling remarks. The online army was like locusts crossing the border. In the past 30 years, I have never felt so much hatred. Under these circumstances, even if the person involved comes forward to clarify, it will not cause much of a splash. People are curious and don't care about the truth. They just want to see what they want to see. At this time, Sister Wong found me. After understanding the ins and outs of the matter, she volunteered to let me use the company account to clarify, saying that this will have a greater impact. We are an e-commerce company. The official account has more than 600,000 followers. I was very grateful. I posted a clarification video using the company account. In the video, showing the payment slips for the house and car my parents bought for me, and the records of Robert's repeated transfers of money to him, as he proposed to invest in my future, which confirmed that Robert was indeed a Phoenix man who bites back. Followed by the video of Robert and his mother discussing drugging and burning me to death, recorded by surveillance cameras. I have already reported to the police. Whether in reality or online, every abuser should pay for their actions. I filed a lawsuit against the most popular online rumormongers and abusers. Robert and Mary were detained by the public security authorities. The online public opinion has reversed. Robert has become a byword for scumbags. Don't be too Robert has become a household name of the year. Many women praised me for being sober, wise and strong. And our company also became popular. In just 1 week, it skyrocketed to more than 5 million followers. Robert and Mary plotted to kill me, but they didn't carry it out. It doesn't constitute a crime. The two people slandered and defamed. Leaking my personal information is a given. Mary took the main responsibility and was sentenced to 1 year and 6 months in prison. Robert, as an accomplice, was sentenced to 8 months in prison. I sold the house and bought a villa to live with my parents. One day, Robert's older brother's wife messaged me. Robert got out. He was unemployed. No company wanted him. He could only set up a roadside stall. I asked him to pay for Thomas's upbringing. He was afraid that he would have no one to take care of him when he got old. He sent me money every month. Obviously, Robert's retribution is not over yet. More than 10 years have passed. I took my children to a small town in the suburbs for a walk. They wanted to eat grilled sausages. We stopped at a sausage stand and asked for 2 sausages. The owner looked up, and the moment he saw the other person, we were both shocked. It was Robert who was selling the sausages. He was thin, with dark skin, wearing an old flat cap. His face was full of life. He looked like a man in his 60s. It was a far cry from the image of a well-dressed and confident man. His eyes were full of emotion. He said excitedly to me, "Jenny, when I was in prison, I had a dream in which you didn't leave me. You gave birth to my child through artificial insemination. But I suffocated the baby. And I pushed you down the stairs. I regret it. I really regret it. I should have stayed with you. I could have had a happy family." Tears welled up in Robert's clouded eyes. He saw the bright, hopeful look in the eyes of the 7-year-old mixed-race twins at my side. "You gave birth to them through artificial insemination, didn't you? It must be hard for you to raise 2 children alone. My mother died of a terminal illness a few years ago. No one will come between us again. Let's get back together. The children need a father." He said this and tried to take my daughter's hand. A blond man suddenly appeared. He pushed Robert away and warned him sternly not to touch my daughter. Robert mumbled and looked at me. In the end, he didn't say anything. The light in his eyes went out. After divorcing Robert, I let myself go for a while, traveling around the world to take my mind off things. I met John from Denmark while sitting in a hot air balloon watching the animal migration in the African savanna. He was 4 years younger than me and fell in love with me at first sight. He followed me all the way from Kenya to China. I was moved by him. We fell in love and got married. After 2 years, we had a pair of cute twins. I didn't get to eat the sausages. The kids were attracted to the balloons held by an old man passing by. I caught up with the old man holding the kids and bought 2 balloons. Behind us came the sound of shouting and cursing. A young boy pushed Robert to the ground and kicked him several times. A passerby tried to intervene. The young boy cursed and swore. "I hit my own father. What's it to you?" He kicked Robert again. "You old fool, pay up. Lingling and I are getting married and want to buy a house. Give me all your savings." Robert kept begging for mercy. "I have no money left. I really have no money." "If you have no money, go sell your blood or organs. You insisted on being my father." "Jenny." Someone patted my shoulder. Robert's sister-in-law was standing behind me. Her eyes were full of joy, looking at the way I was dressed. "She must be doing well now. Seeing that you are still so young and pretty makes me feel at ease. Thanks to your idea, our family's life has become less stressful. Every time I think about Robert and his mother plotting against you, I let Thomas beat Robert up to take out my anger for you." Seeing her so full of hatred for evil, I sincerely said to her, "Thank you." "For what?" "It's nothing." She waved her hand and gave a hearty laugh. Not long after that, Robert fell while selling his wares and broke his hip. He had internal bleeding and was in critical condition. The hospital called his son, but no one answered. The head nurse was my best friend, Elizabeth. As he lay dying, Robert asked Elizabeth if I hadn't been so mean to her. Would it be possible that? Elizabeth rolled her eyes and interrupted. "There are no ifs." "That's right. No ifs," Robert muttered, with endless remorse, and ended his short life in pain. The end.